Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. Yes, that means you. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question, and that is to talk about the foundation of what is known as emotional abuse or narcissistic abuse, just to sort of go into some precepts, some description, just to know where your boundaries and standards are, because it's usually the loss of sight of a contradictory internal state, which is positive self-referencing, which is basically inhibitory or a preface to sort of that dragging down your energy. When your energy is so low, you feel like you're dragging your hands on the ground. You don't have any buoyancy, lightness of being. You're not sort of taking stock or taking steps in the direction of the manner that you need to. When it comes to narcissistic abuse, there's something that is neglected that causes a lot of distress, causing people to feel distraught, strung out, can't figure it out, feeling sort of always under the gun, constantly fearful. In other words, there's no reprieve or relief from this. And people, because of the repetition of narcissistic abuse or these types of individuals that they are exposed or open, vulnerable to, they don't realize sort of they're in the midst of this, or maybe it's taken place for so long that they just sort of default or surrender, basically give up their own right to feeling enough, to feeling okay, to having a foundation that is supported by life versus destructed or distraught or paranoid in life, constantly fearful. A narcissistic abuse will basically stem from their pathological sense of their own self-importance coupled with a lack of empathy. So what does lack of empathy really look like in narcissistic abuse? It means just sort of railroading over other people's emotion. Stalwarts, just sort of blindly, just sort of hit and run conversations. Things that don't ever get resolved or rectified can result in basically what feels like a lot of work. And that basically then creates and bringing in just sort of this unsettling aspect when there is a lack of empathy in that you experience in your life. So from someone outside who is narcissistic, abuse, meaning doing it repetitively to the point of destruction, to the point where it's hurting another. It's a hindrance. It's causing trauma. It's causing dis-ease. It's causing a lack and a void, and feeling a lack of support, sort of life-sustaining energy, if you will, sort of that chi, that life force energy, whatever you equate that to. You must come to terms with a feeling that you experience within. So when you look at the calibration or sort of how things go with energetic dynamics, or how people are treated emotionally, narcissistic abuse, it's sort of a violation, neglect, a dismiss, and ignoring, and sort of a willful blindfold, just sort of a blindness to the presence, experience, talents, fondness, revelation, discovery of others. So there's a sort of annihilating of that sort of emotional attraction that other people should get and receive from their non-narcissistic counterpoints. Meaning, that they don't give you you can't finish a sentence, you can't finish a thought, you can't finish a feeling. Things feel unfair, but you can't pinpoint it. And oftentimes it's because so much has already been allowed that it's difficult to put the emotional brakes and slow down and see what is narcissistic abuse until you can, take a step out of that circle and allow that to close in front of you without sort of ever needing to enter into an emotional trap, a negativity, sort of fear-based component in your life. As we evolve on, I feel the most precious commodity you have is your time. It is sort of your being, and the awareness and sort of a reverence and pious and humility, which is not wrought on excess. When it comes to narcissistic abuse, there is a lot of excess them going on. Their needs, their voice, their body actions, their punitive or fear-inducing mechanisms of relating that are typified by a lack of attachment or bonding. Someone who is narcissistic and abuses others in relationships takes and takes and takes and takes from others. And the problem is that those people are sort of gaslighted into giving, feeling that this perpetual cycle is the way of pleasing and to get pleasure. But when really it is the depriving and sort of the invalidating of one's own organic, really life connecting, life merging, just sort of an intersection with the glory, or what you might go, wow, this is what it's all about for me. I'm finally, stepping into this symphony. I've always wanted to listen to this orchestra, and there I can hear them warming up, and I'm so excited, like certain B states that you've wanted to get into, that are freedom-based and not fear-based. The problem with narcissistic abuse is that they dole onto others more than their fair share of criticism and shaming. Shame, if we look at these feel and be states, which is really what we go into in depth, I really want to pull out the Dr. David Hawkins power versus force. When we look at what is narcissistic abuse, taking advantage and exploiting others. What is exploitation? When someone does not have the ability or means or resources to stand up for themselves. For example, a child who is wrought into poverty, exploiting their needs. They are hungry. Then if you go and do and work for 14 hours, then I will give you this crust of bread. I mean, that is exploitation. It's taking advantage of the weakness, the sort of innocence, the naivete, dare I say, ignorance, greenness, sort of, or those people who have a large heart. Oftentimes their heart is so large that they forgive others' misdoings very readily. In fact, to a fault, which means to their own demise, and they don't realize that then they become an active component of narcissistic abuse. In other words, bringing it on, and then trying to, constantly work around it as if your whole life is meant to be work-oriented. And the problem with narcissistic abuse is on the other side. They really want others to do a toil and a suffering, meaning that you should hurt, meaning that you should feel pain, that they should inflict it even as such, to prove their point, to prove their theory, to prove their brass tacks, to prove that you sting, that you hurt, and then sort of that pain can be really a dragged down component, meaning with repetition and experience, they will ladle on the shame, which, as we talk about energy levels, there's energy levels that are based on strength and, integrity, like strength, like a car. It goes over a couple bumps and it doesn't it doesn't start squeaking afterwards. We say that car has good body integrity. It can hold itself together. It's well built. It's, there's good quality there. When we talk about expression of a narcissist, oftentimes we're talking where there is shame to be sort of put like confetti on other people. And a shame is a very low energy vibration. Even though it might feel kind of powerful, like, it's very strong or intense, it is a weakening of another, a perpetual weakening. And the issue with life is that things will result in disorganization unless you keep order. So the narcissist will utilize a lot of sort of chaos and moving attractions, moving targets, moving soliloquies, stories that you have to try to put together that results in a shame-based attitude. And a shame is, as Dr. Hawkins says, it's perilously close to death. I mean, it is that fearful, the existential experience. It's sort of a philosophical when we talk about feelings. And that shame can, of course, what drives people to, of course, leave their house with clothes on. You have a healthy shame. Obviously, it's against the law also to go naked unless you're at a nudist colony. And that's sort of your thing. But, there's healthy shame. In other words, you don't put all yourself out there. You cover up, you have some privacy. And you're this is to be a given. But the problem is that the energy shame is akin or close to losing face. So this is, when you lose face, people say, what is this isolation? And they want to understand the cause that creates the effect. And instead of feeling like that you are isolated, realize that one learns isolation as a result of shaming. So there's a cause that creates the effect, that creates the symptomology, that creates this fear that is embedded and embroiled in narcissistic abuse. Basically, where it's a because of their lack of empathy, because they don't have a sense for the feelings or needs of another person, they get off the hook, and they will then shame others as a way of sort of fluffing their own selves up, as if they don't have to do the work. They don't have to get dressed up. They don't have to cut their hair. They don't have to put their underwear on underneath their clothes. No, these are the people who, wear bras for an outfit. Guys who, you've got their entire buttocks, they are shameless, but to the point where they will bully others and create shame cast onto others. They, and it will produce basically what Freud would call neurosis. And, this is a condition that's based on sort of that pushing down that energy level. And that there's a cause, though, that creates this effect. The shaming, then that results in people feeling that they're hidden, or they've lost face, they've lost reputation, they've lost friendships, they've lost the ability to relate. This is a very, low level of consciousness, which basically is with repetition and experience. So there's no logical way that people then try to say, but look, I've got, I've done this and this with my hands. I've done this for you. I've made this. And shouldn't I not be ashamed? So oftentimes it evades sort of this logical thinking, and people are then trying to live in their head and trying to philosophically or intellectualize matters of their heart, or where they're sort of getting an excess of these negatives as a way of being, as if their life is supposed to be cast in this emotional dungeon of sorts. Well, you know what? It's the digital age right now. And if you can have shelter, that says a lot. I mean, you can get a lot at your fingertips without having to live a life of feeling banished, ill repute, sort of. You know, the narcissist abuse is sort of like that. They tend to always look at people through a dirty lens, meaning they're always flicking dirt on you and going, look, you're dirty. You know, you're unkempt. You're this. You're not that. Versus a and it becomes really what is known in psychology as negative validation. People are then defining their identity by what they're not. Like they are not good enough. They are not smart enough. This is the telltale narcissist abuse, when others feel sort of disloyal. In other words, that they are, if a sense of loyalty is also bred into, like, they have to be loyal to this person, as if there's this feeling that this person holds your truth, when they're not allowing you to see the truth within yourself, which just sounds like an epiphany, but meaning that the truth, the calm, the power, the creativity, the lack of burnout, the happiness or fulfillment in your life from the moment of waking, pretty much more consistently, should be your B state in life. We hold these truths to be self-evident. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Like, let's just think of that, like life and liberty. So oftentimes it's the antithesis of this is the experiential of narcissistic abuse in an office, when someone's trying to talk down someone who is a particularly great communication, a great talent, a great problem solver, great at fixing things, great at seeing things, great at being a great person. But they will find ways to shame and then cause a sense of ill repute that is permanent, which is shaming of others, which means holding that against them, with which they can never overlive or sort of live out. In other words, they're trying to cast an unholy sort of as if you are always going to be separated from your happiness. And they give the miscommunication as if they hold a truth or a key to your happiness, when the key is always within, but they make others sort of blind because of a lack of empathy and the repeated sort of numbing out to others' needs. You're not important. You don't matter. Those sort of experiential states are experienced when people are withheld information, things that matter, things that are important, like your self-esteem, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This sort of gets away from people and what the experience therein is, because they allow the perturbed hostilities of others to mark in the shadows their own expectations or what should be expected of them. So people then begin to live according to others' expectations, which they can do for some time. You should be this, you should be that, you should live this way, you should live that, and finding that isn't resonating. But then people end up, doing it because they'll foot the bill, because because if not, you would be having no place to live. You'd be in a landfill. You'd be somewhere worse, So people then go along and they endure narcissistic abuse. They don't rise up through the ranks in their job. They don't rise up in the ranks in relationships. They don't ever learn to play golf, paddle, take a walk, learn what it is to relax and be at ease with others. So sort of a narcissist tension where they keep their self-important ball in the air. In other words, it's divert all attention to them. There can be a whole great big world, but they want you to notice their fingernails. Look at the great fingernails that they've got. And you're like, you just missed like a whale jumping out of the water that you could have seen. But no, you were being told, you know, to keep your eyes, ears, everything in your heart sort of stuck on the imaginings of these others, meaning that you don't even have the chance to rip your own away without the excessive hurt. And so people, that's why they will perpetuate or become almost a non aware enabler. So and not like a willing enabler, unawarely sort of keep holding yourself to the fire, and they don't realize that your freedom is within. You have to let go of their judgment, and realize, that even though it appears as a truth, or they want it to be as a truth for their needs, what do your needs tout though? And why does this have to be labeled a good or a bad thing? Why can't you just go with the flow? These are my needs, and it is okay. This feeling and B state, proclamation, declaration, or should be, sort of a part of your repertoire that you keep homeostasis in. Those checks and balance go unnoticed, undone, and sort of just will go willy-nilly, just off the bandwagon, and hard to sort of rein in the effects after the narcissistic abuse. So it's sort of an annihilation that is based on, I would say simply, if you can understand, if someone has a lack of empathy, they don't understand, have an ability, they have an inability to be there with you in your feelings and understand that this, because of this, it is hurtful, it's causing you emotional pain, pain without words, pain that doesn't go away, pain that doesn't get, you can't give it an emotional bottle. You feel that it becomes unmanageable or really gets in the way. The problem is because the narcissist is still they've still got their emotional hand up, and you're still trying to call on them to see what you can do. So the result of that abuse, it requires sort of a self-denial mechanism, where then people can't really see when they're being done in. They lose the ability to be aware, to feel, to sense, and to know, and so they feel that they're repeated in these relationships. And we have a great viewer question that comes in then sort of after this sort of really derailing experience. How do you get back to the healthy? Well, I'll tell you, a lot of people do not want to hear about how to get better. Just to quickly, and we will answer your question, but on narcissistic abuse, people would furthermore saturate and become more understand that, rather than understanding the freedom that you have within, because that's scarier, because it hasn't been enlightened, it hasn't been navigated, it hasn't been shown, the light hasn't, you haven't had a chance to live in the positive. It's like something you can't see, but you want to prohibit, you want to stop, and you can't live your life constantly on the brakes. You will wear yourself out, you will burn out, you will realize then, just stop bringing in. Once you identify the expectations that are from a narcissist abuse. In other words, what do they expect? They expect that you are going to suffer silencing of your voice. And that's really one of the more significant things that you have to experience and go with. I mean, look at all on Capitol Hill. I mean, these people are running amok, but to live from a certain part of your being that you really have a passion in, and not just coping, not just living, one step from the pain all the time, but can you let go of the pain? Can you let go of that negative momentum? And realizing, and where does the negative begin? It begins in the shame. It begins with the negation. That's the cause that creates the effect. It is not the negation, the isolation, the desperation, the loneliness that people feel. They are embarrassed to even go there. They are afraid to sit, even though it's just a moment of understanding, to see the cause that's created that effect. And to understand that it is not a permanent, meaning you are not a downtrodden, burned out, isolated, shame-based, to live in the outskirts. There's all this like identity that gets wrapped up. Meaning they want your identity to be cast from an external locus of control, meaning them. It's easier for a king to call people their peasants and then to starve them into deprivation, because that's how you get control. It's very barbaric when you think about it. And then you say, how you come into a relationship in a certain way pristine, not in an arrogant way, not in a look at me and not look at you way, but just to look at how you come into and enter things, even a very moment, in pristine nature, which means you have the ability of your higher nature to call forth that which is life-sustaining, and to let go of, meaning replace the experience thereof, and sort of intersperse the positive life-sustaining therein, and to not be sort of, getting a larger percentage out of that shame-based denial setting, because the denial and denying of your own energy, and you become basically like a willing participant to do yourself in. And you have to realize that there's a momentum that you need to jump out of. There's a swim that you need to stop stroking. There's someone else's I am that you need to stop stroking, or something that is false, that was not real, that is okay, that it is not you. So it's okay to say, this is not me. But that very utterance, because the narcissist always has something, they're in it to win it, and there's always something in it for them personally. They personally want to have this leg up. They personally have this gaminess, which causes a lot of work and energy to sustain. And oftentimes it doesn't feel like you're investing in something. You're investing in something that's more of a hope. And like that book, Hope is Not a Strategy, it becomes more of a curse. And you can't undo or try to heal yourself by trying to better understand an abuser. You must understand, though, that you must recognize that I feel that there's a negative momentum that gets people going into this shame-based lifestyle behavior for many weeks and months and seasons at a time. In other words, to trying to win the favor, to win the eye of the boss, to win the eye of your attractor, to try, and that it will denote failure in the same breath. Unfortunately, because if you're going up against a narcissist, they're not going to have the same value center. They're that of integrity. So you can't really share this sort of positive self-reference. They don't allow it. There's something about a lack of empathy and a lack of mirror neurons. You can feel it energetically if you're sensitive or an empath, basically meaning you have more than your fair share of empathy, which means, someone goes, I'm hurting, and you're going, oh, tell me about it. You're like get me the ladle, get me the gravy, give me another helping, you can relate. And then you double up on the negativity. Next thing you know, you're wondering why, here we go again. Here, this is I thought I knew better. And you find yourself, regressing. At a certain point in time, regressing ain't no fun and it ain't no happy matter. Reclaiming and just saying enough is enough. Just making that utterance and knowing that you're not going to bring any more ill repute into your energetic circle. It is not going to live, aspirate, breathe, take momentum, take you down, take you out, take you away. Your A game is always present. That's the problem with abuse. And that's, with abuse is that people, they literally get, into a section or a segment of life that they don't really feel that they matter, and nothing that they do matters, and they feel ineffective to change or have the difference, that things can get better. They lose hope or belief. I mean, maybe it's in your car, maybe it's in your closet, but belief is still there. You do have the key. And realizing, even though it hurts, even though it's never been said, I know I hold the key when I know I hold the key when I know I hold the key when what am I doing? And then if you can then recognize your behaviors, the behaviors which start as a feeling. So here we're really going down into a feeling of liberty. And understanding and using this even as your moment. What is liberty? Meaning I am free, okay? Not entrapped, not going to the next, not on my way to the next trap. In other words, where are you suffering, and where is freedom really breathing? So in other words, your ability. Metacognition, your ability to think about what you're thinking about, is a human trait, a human quality. Is this advertised on the internet, on the Newsweek? No. Why are we here at the Peace and Harmony channel? So you can get stronger. And you know what strength is, and it's not the negating of all where you've been before. So a lot of people feel that they're having a life, a happy life, feeling healthy. To answer this question about narcissistic abuse, they don't realize that they have to understand their own cause, their own symptomology that's created the effect, that sent something going and spinning in their life. Where definitely, if it feels not of your wanting, not of your wisdom, and not of your and now you're finding that you're needing to do some undoing, some throwing out, de-junking your feel states, that it's no longer worthwhile for you to get distracted. What are they up to? What are they doing? How would they want, so you might have part of your life, still you've got a toe in the poison water, you've got a little sip left, and you're going, why am I, why do I feel like I'm sick? And you're drinking the poison. You're still in that abuse momentum of negation. I am not. It's still reverberating like echoes, yodeling through the canyons, where part of you, your being, needs to infuse how many a positive self-reference. This needs to be done with repetition and experience. Brushing your teeth. I am a good person. I am a good person. I am strong. I am complete. I have integrity. And I know my truth. And because of that denial, it's caused me the undoing in so many ways. And that too has to have a segment and an ending. And when you say, I'm no longer bringing in those negation thoughts, I'm no longer moving into it. I'm no longer leaning into that trouble. I see trouble and you just are able to not enter into the fan of trouble. Trouble's coming, you're cool, calm, and collected as a cucumber. And you're not made into a salad, you're not made into a dildo, you're not made into some gumbo. You're cool, calm, and collected with metacognition, your ability to see and redirect and think about what you're thinking about and reframe. And rather than saying the wounds of this narcissistic abuse, which hit me in the gut, which is a result of shaming, which will take you very close to a decadent death, where they seem that they're just they look at life with such disregard. Jackson Brown, as if that's strength, as if you can be that way and just climb on over other people to get your management position, to lie through your teeth, to falsify whatever it is that they're booting up there, okay, with other violations of rules. And then what other sort of has this destroyed part of your freedom, your I am? And then so that in that freedom where you get excited, and it's more like where you feel just it's okay to get excited about a little something that has a lot to do with nothing, just being, and it is so discounted, being free, as if that is, you can never have it. There's always something else between you and your freedom. The narcissist will kind of always keep that where you're not always quite good enough, and that will live in your memory if you allow it. So don't allow it. Don't give it life. Don't give it oxygen. Don't revisit it and say, oh boy, I'm putting more fertilizer on my true loneliness. I'm never going to have intimacy again. I'm never going to be able to have physical closeness. Why are you speaking this into existence? You have so many opportunities, moment by moment by moment. In fact, in this video, 37 minutes, there's moment by moment. You can reframe and say, I deserve closeness. I am not going to hurt in closeness, and this is okay. And I know what is different. And so speaking new, feel, and be states is really, really part of your paradise that you could either avoid and say, I can't, I'm afraid. I mean, you are going to eventually have to put more energy into keeping your own self held back, than living forward. So the hindrance, the things that hinder you you really create, and I was writing this the other day, people really do create their own obstacles. And as if it's cool, to always be desiring, wanting, on your way to getting the next phone, on your way to getting the next shoes, ordering the next this, and so that, and realize that there's oftentimes a lack of empathy in organizations from the top down, and you can look at that, and it mirrors very many family systems. Narcissistic abuse is also used and promulgated by guilt, okay, which is the energy level of 30, meaning if you are in guilt so commonly used in our society to manipulate and punish. Manage self in a variety of expressions: remorse, self-recrimination, masochism, victimhood. People feel guilty for all sorts of reasons, unspoken, and then they will maybe, figure out the reason. What are you guilty of? Oftentimes there's nothing that you've done, or no, it's like this original sin. Are you always going to live in a state of guilt? These are B states, that you are like emotionally driving through. Are you in have you picked up a jalopy for yourself and gone, yeah, I really want to know what it's like to live in a jalopy, like emotionally, and never go anywhere and have breakdowns? That is what guilt. And you can either say, I want to struggle with this my entire life, or no, I am not going to struggle with this. I'm going to be invited to guilt and to shame, and with no reason, with no logic bearing, but to struggle, which means to go back and forth with, which means, to a certain point, you just want to say, I am done. Enough is enough. Apathy then, when you're getting energy level 50, I'm sorry. When, apathy, which means you don't really, nothing is really going my way. I can't ever make any change in this. It's always gonna be the dumps like this. I'm always gonna live impoverished emotionally. My job is gonna be XYZ. You're speaking negation into reality. That's that becomes apathy, where you're not you're hanging your hat on sorrow, and you're hung up on playing the blues. That's grief. That's when you get the sadness. You're grief stricken. Loss is, you're just focusing on a loss, what you do not have. That's not positive self-reference. And it's okay to have this, even though this narcissist, who seemed to be the bearer and giver of truth or life, its very self, if they've caused this, it can be, a very depressive outlook. And then people will then sort of default to that fear and then lower basis. I'm fearful. And you don't realize when they're being run by fear. And then until you know it. And say, I am not run by that anymore, because it will run you ragged, run you directionless, and it will keep you in a state of apathy and feeling ineffective. The other term, that we talk about in psychology is self-agency, the ability to self-advocate, sort of not rely on, not, become that cycle of the narcissist, but to sort of have an internal independence. What does this mean? Without grief, without fear, without being schooled in you will always, and then that desire, which oftentimes I think is another healing factor, where people then feel that I'm on the rebound. I'm gonna go and or I'm coming out of it now, and this is what I'm gonna do. And they get into sort of an overextension of themselves. They try too hard. They overwork. They become workaholics, and then they feel that they have to accumulate sort of certain things before they're able to experience the cessation of fear, the cessation of guilt, the cessation of smoking, the cessation of alcoholism, the cessation of pain, like to allow that habit to cease, allow it to stop being rehabilitated, or reigniting it, re-sparking that direction, meaning out of habit, meaning like in the pandemic, to me that was a huge reset and a big lesson learned, because there was a lot of consuming, a lot of narcissism going on, a lot of superficial, and a lot of other things that, then things came to a screeching halt. And some people, I think, learned a lot of lessons, and hopefully their lessons are still with them, and they don't, forget the lessons, because, the narcissist, what is a narcissist emotional state? Oftentimes, they live by emotional greed. They live by fear. They don't have enough. They can't have enough money, fans, isn't it okay then for you to be different and say, enough is enough? Simple is. And it doesn't mean that you're unsophisticated, undesirable. Do you notice all my uns? The people, their feel state begins to divert and default to like an automatic negative highlight reel. Fear, because that fear is constantly like, I'm not there. Wherever that is, it's nebulous, unnamed. It's in the clouds. It's in the rainbow. Is it in the cherry? I mean, in the cherry on top? Like, where, is it doing something that you haven't done yet? I mean, so there's all this mystification that keeps people keeping fear in their life, and it will build up into a much and I think people hold on to it because it makes them impulsive, and they don't have that responsibility between A and B. If you stay fearful, impulsive, just sort of, and then that becomes downtrodden, downgraded, discredited, like losing a credit rating, discredited, because fear doesn't allow a certain awareness of cessation of fear. And so you see these people who are angry, and these people can rule the roost through negativity, through their anger. They get things done. They will yell, be volatile, quarrelsome, litigious. Do I have to get my lawyer? This is your, they'll rule with this all the time, and they'll tell you who's going to win and who's going to lose, and they'll always put you in a loser pile, and they'll be very proud of themselves. A lot of pride. Look at me. Look at what I have done. It doesn't matter if anybody else contributed, supported, did something, helped you through. I mean, it's all about them, and there's negation or a discrediting of others. In fact, the problem of narcissist abuse is if you've been through the love bombing phase where you've quote unquote gotten close, it was an amazing grace. It was amazing. There's all this. There's all this, like, in this sort of truth of being comes alive, just the way this person's pride or arrogance that they have, and it might be based on something about them which is not based on you, and then people are foundless, and they will sort of have this constant, never-ending, foundationless guilt or foundationless blaming that they do of others. And then people then that's where the gaslighting of narcissist abuse, people who are narcissistic, they tend to think everyone else around them is stupid or not the genius, not endowed, and it's just so terribly frustrating for them to be so smart, so good looking, so wealthy. It's just so difficult, and they need more attention. It's just like they hoard up the air in the room, and they don't allow you to have any being step in. In other words, people don't even feel that they're, because of the fear, they don't feel that they are grounded, have a foundation. And if you have a foundation in negation, that means any then little step you make forward, people don't recognize. That's why I talk about the recovery gift. It's so important when you've made a firm step and you've had that metacognition, and you go to yourself, great job, not getting sucked into the tendency, the impetus, the habit. It's a real, like smoking, abuse. It will keep other people, it's like a negative habit. It's like smoking. You have to allow the cessation of the momentum of abuse, because my feeling that narcissistic abuse, it's been done in, they try to do others in by a lot of this momentum, this percussive emotional bantering. That pride, comes, prestige, stature, and as if you are then to sort of mimic or, you know, it's very difficult to keep alongside someone who is very arrogant. It necessitates the goodness of your being in a family. I mean, in other words, there's a golden one, the one who is the good looking, the other one gets ignored, gets spanked, gets slapped, gets name called. I mean, they feel the runt of the litter, if that's even not even a thing, but you know, just sort of a demoralizing, I think, is of others. Demoralizing is part of the symptomology. It's a tendency to demoralize. I'm just going to look this up, even though that this is such a crass moment, but to demoralize others. First, it rips away. It rips away. It's sort of the shredding, like it makes a shredded wheat of someone's internal being, their own internal real estate, as if you're on arid ground. You can't build there. You're nothing but weeds, prickers. You know, as if you're uninhabitable, which is really. It's a way that they're able to deflect their own inadequacy. They project it onto others. This is part of their bantering. So to demoralize, to cause someone to lose confidence or hope, disheartening. I think, you know, if you look at the Wizard of Oz, remember they go to the Tin Man. I finally got a heart, you know, square man, courage. If you are with someone in your workplace that's demoralizing, freaking you out, in your family, doing or saying something to cause you to lose, to despirit you, you want to go and hide, okay? This is depression, not being able to get out of bed. Not being able to get out of bed for years. Okay, this is not funny. Okay, to corrupt. It's archaic to corrupt the morals of someone. Okay, so when we talk about the pristine, I want to talk about sort of the undoing and the positive self-referencing thereof. This is a new feeling habit. Positive self-reference. It's going to combat and help to heal narcissistic abuse, which is the chronic and constant demoralizing of another. It comes from the Latin moralis. So they do this through a number of ways, but it comes from the Latin moralis. And then it came then to the French de, and then French moral, demoraliser, a word from the French Revolution, de meaning expressing reversal, okay, going backwards, plus moralis, say to go back from to cause you regression, childishness, loss of responsibility, demoralized that you have to work. Maybe they're born with 1,000 gazillion brain cells and they don't have to work for anything, and then anyone else who has to work is like, oh, you've got to make your money working, as if you're there's some problem with you. Demoralizing. What does it mean? So narcissistic abuse, to cause to turn aside, meaning you're at them smiling, hey, you know, to turn aside or away from what is good, true, or morally right, to weaken the morale of, to discourage. Okay, to have these things takes a lot of energy. So if someone is demoralizing, they're trying, that's the, you know, and someone says, I feel broken. It is a feel state where someone feels, you know, that their heart, their morals, and as if they're afraid that this truth, that a light, that something good about them could really be, quote unquote, okay, and acceptable. So And so this is a really important, so you must then embrace what you feel is the good. No one has to tell you what you feel is the good. I feel good when it might be something that they want you to stay up, party, work, da da da, and you feel so good when you get a good night's sleep, and they're like, you're such a party pooper. You went to bed, and they're trying to get you to turn away from what is morally good or right. Hey, we'll make more money, we'll get more sales, da da da. Demoralizing others. And that can destroy the normal functioning of. That's what that is. So this is not just dating a good-looking guy, a good-looking girl, working for a corporation. This is truth. This is not you making something up. So you got to get back to that morale. You got to get back to that momentum. You got to clear off a countertop, a day, a week, a month, okay, a year. You got to clear it off from this demoralizing behavior and say, I'm clearing off my calendar. I'm making time for what's right. Period. End of story. No back and forth. No more no more questioning. No more why. No more wondering. No more apathy, listlessness, shame. If you why? Because when you go down, you cannot allow anybody to allow you to feel less than. Eleanor Roosevelt. Do not, and then this becomes, you're unrecognizable to yourself. When people are emerging from that, so people feel somewhat like unrecognizable to themselves. This becomes a mental conundrum. And it's from being so limited. Why? What is the cause? It's from being so limited. Limited. I mean, it's from limiting yourself. So in what ways do you need to stop limiting yourself? I've limited myself by, to what ways was it good? But then if there's so much limitation that you feel a restriction, in list 1 through 20, in what ways have I really limited and hindered myself? If there's 20, hey, just put it out there. It doesn't mean you're going to take this up to somebody and go, look how terrible I am. This is for you and for your heart. So where did this become that living entity thing? And then where, and realize that it's not life sustaining, and then that you no longer want to participate in that sort of delinquency of your heart, meaning putting yourself on hold anymore. To attest to that person's question, when your people are afraid to go out and meet people again, afraid to date, afraid to have intimacy, kiss, make out, hold hands, go to dinner, make dinner, all of this sort of testiness and belonging. Well, then you've got to chalk it up to positive self-reference and make sure that you've got a really good habit of positive self-reference. I am good. I am strong. I am living in meaning. I am sustaining meaning. I am sustaining heart. I am sustaining purity in reflection. And this is okay. This is sustaining, and this is easy. This is easy. But oftentimes that limiting, that hindering, that hurting, that has become the mechanism oftentimes of people's feeling. That's their kinesthesiology. Until they back it up and then they realize that there's been this infiltrating, which is really what it is. It's an infiltrating. Okay. Infiltrating. I'm going to look it up for this. Okay, what does it mean? to enter or gain access in organization, a place. So there's an infiltrating surreptitiously and gradually, especially in order to acquire secret information. So in other words, to get whatever secret information you have. Maybe you were a date to get them and you helped them through something and you were taken advantage of. You did their work. You painted their house. You did all their paperwork. You did all their da-di-da. You did all their dirty work, okay? We've been in this very spot before, in this very momentum spot, when we talk about the cause, like the psychopathic cause that creates this very dramatic effect. And realize that it becomes really, if it's a long period of time, then you might feel very separate and distinct and away from coming out of this abuse, or feeling like an okay organism, or just feeling a positive self-reference. So you need to get back into your own positive self-reference saddle and get back trotting a little bit and realize that you need, what does it feel like? It's going to feel a little different. The same players aren't going to be, who you're looking at in the magazine. You're not using, because that's bringing the negative self-reference. That's their echoing of their imagining and their needs. But, yours will and is, they will come to life once there's recognition and kind of coming back to a sort of privacy of self and a positive self-referencing that isn't based on any of the myriad or assorted, sundry ways that demoralizing can come. Pressure, peer pressure. Dress like this. I don't want to dress like that. Dress like this. Do that. I don't want to do that. Don't do that. Get into trouble. This is what's cool. Whatever all that they had sold you. Just, coming back and not without having to take up any matter or happenstance with an abuser, which means you're more sort of cracking open an inner layer where you come to an internal positive self-reference that is complete in its understanding. And then allowing by faith, and allowing these new faith states to be, and allow that to sort of bring you into being, rather than sort of ducking down. Fear. No, fear is off the time watch. I'm not setting any more fear into the schedule. Been there, done that, got the heartache, got the divorce, got the separation, got the lawyer bill, whatever else, and is it okay? Will life support you? You can just ask gently and ask for a gentle answer. And to know that this positive self-reference should be with you ever after. And it should be like a healing layer that is always, that's sort of like put in there like mysteriously, like one of those rings, like those Danish rings. So you're like, how did they get that thin layer of custard and all that flakiness? You're like, how do I get that thin layer of positive self-reference, no matter who's yelling, criticizing, trying to infiltrate all these different things, that emotional narcissistic abuse, that sort of cycle. You can sort of step out and realize that you have flexibility of being, which brings about a sort of perhaps a little better state. And what's a better B state for me is, list 1 through 20, is to be listening, is to be daydreaming, is to be quiet, is to have silence, is to be meditating, is to be soaking in a Epsom bath, to put in different essential oils and just absorbing positive self-reference as a feeling, and allowing yourself to practice this and practice and rehearse till it's just an automatic. And there's no other perforation or permeate coming within that can be adulterated. There is, because they will adulterate. This is just what I'm telling you, adulterate. To render poorer in quality, so narcissistic abuse, render something poorer in quality by adding another substance, typically an inferior one, to taint, to debase, to degrade. So you're just this, you're just that. So for their expedience, even though you do not defile or do unto others, you know, there's people who are distinctly different. And it's okay to not fulfill their cycle. And to say, to what degree can I have positive self-reference? And just positive self-reference, what does that mean? 1 through 20. I'm nourishing myself. I'm bathing myself. I know how to sleep. I'm not getting involved in excess. I'm not involved in excess sort of negative feelings. These and so excess gambling, buying, eating. So these other stuff, you know, stuffing your feelings down as if you don't have control anymore. You know, at a certain point, you do have control and you do have the answer. And you can say, you know what, this is where I slipped up. That was the cause that created the effect that resulted in sort of that rewounding. And I'm no longer interested. I'm no longer an energetic match to that sort of victim thing. It's kind of like leaving the hood. You know, for those people, you can't leave out of the hood. You know, you're always going to be crime. You're always, you know, and then they get a class, they get a degree, they get a new influencer, you know, and they're out. Been there, done that, never to go back, you know. So, you know, recognize and saying, I'm not an energetic match. Like, whatever thrust me, whatever force, you know, thrust me to that direction, I'm no longer an energetic match to that. So there's a different energy then. And so the energy doesn't throw itself, doesn't thrust itself, doesn't go, I'm so angry, I'm so dumb, I'm so, you know, stop the self-injury, stop, you know, so it's just the cessation. And realizing that the cause is that sort of perpetrator. And even though you've never felt like you've been a truth monger or been able to state what truth is, but if you can just know where the defiling was, and will continue to be, you don't have to continue to live that. In fact, you can be completely different, and even if you don't win their validation, which is part of it, that has to be part of the acceptance, and that it's not a compromise, that you getting out of the abuse, it doesn't mean you're forever going to compromise, be weaker, less than, and all that reverberation. You can shut the door to that sound chamber and just be like, I am not an energetic match to that sort of belittling, demeaning, and that sort of lifestyle. I'm not an energetic match. I do not even find that attractive. Even though they might be trying to attracting, I no longer find that attractive. I'm not impressed. When you begin to then say, I'm no longer going to be at the receiving end of an assailant, you know, you're not that. You step aside, you yield. You know, how do you get through it? Let them go with all their force. Let them think that they're the only one. Let them try to scare other people, you know, and not allow you to have any substance. They're like all the style without the substance, and that's that lack of empathy. You can sometimes almost even feel it energetically when you're with them, because you can feel that there's sort of a lack of being, that they're just sort of gone, checked out, and they're usually trying to look for something better, more, you know, eventually they're on some sort of chase that will do them in Don't let yourself be done in by another. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. And I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out. Have a beautiful day.